Some people do not struggle to love. They struggle to feel safe while loving. That changes everything. Because sincere love can still come wrapped in hesitation, doubt, and quiet panic. They are not cold in the way people assume. They are often warm, deep, and emotionally serious. But the closer something gets to their heart, the harder it becomes to stay relaxed inside it. Love feels beautiful and dangerous at the same time. They can miss you all day and still take hours to reply. They can crave reassurance and still act like they do not need it. They can mean every affectionate word they say, then suddenly go quiet after feeling too seen. That silence is not always loss of feeling. Sometimes it is the nervous system pulling the brakes. Because trust issues are not always about suspecting betrayal. Sometimes they are about fearing how much damage disappointment could do. And people who love sincerely often fear that damage the most. They know how deeply they attach once they let themselves. So they watch carefully. They study tone, timing, pauses, energy shifts, and the tiny emotional weather changes most people miss. A shorter text can feel louder than a raised voice. A delayed reply can feel like the start of emotional distance. You might only see someone becoming more careful. What you do not see is how quickly their mind has moved from closeness to caution. One small shift and they start protecting themselves. Not because they stopped caring, but because caring now feels exposed. That is why trust issues in sincere people rarely look dramatic at first. They look like overthinking, restraint, and emotional editing. They tell themselves to be chill. Meanwhile, their body is already bracing for something that has not even happened. And this is where people misunderstand them. They think trust issues mean a person is cynical, suspicious, or impossible to please. But many of these people are not expecting disaster every second. They are trying to prevent themselves from needing too much from the wrong person. That fear shapes how they love. It affects when they open, what they reveal, and how long they stay emotionally uncovered. Because healthy affection can feel unfamiliar when emotional safety was inconsistent early on, calm love does not always feel calming at first. Sometimes it feels suspiciously quiet, almost like your body keeps waiting for the hidden cost. If care used to come with unpredictability, your system learns to stay alert inside closeness. Not because you enjoy tension, but because you were shaped by it. So when someone genuine shows up, part of you softens. Another part starts scanning for what might change. You want to believe them. You just do not know how to rest in belief yet. It is the ability to stop guarding every emotional doorway. It is the feeling that you do not have to monitor love to survive it. People with trust issues often understand someone logically before they trust them emotionally. Their mind may say safe while their body still says wait. That is why reassurance does not always land instantly. It can be heard, appreciated, and still not fully absorbed. A loving partner says, "I am here." Their chest still tightens anyway. A kind person stays consistent for weeks. One strange afternoon still feels bigger than all the previous proof. The mind is trying to spare the heart from being blindsided. It would rather doubt early than break later. So trust issues often create strange contradictions. The person wants closeness, but flinches when closeness starts working. They may feel safest when there is a little distance, then ache for more connection the second that distance becomes real. They might finally get the text they wanted, then suddenly feel pressure instead of relief. They might open up during a late-night conversation, then feel exposed the next morning and pull back. They might enjoy being held, then start wondering if they have become too easy to hurt. This is what people rarely talk about. Sometimes fear of vulnerability appears right after intimacy, not before it. Because the most dangerous moment is not always when love is absent. It is when love starts to matter. Once it matters, loss becomes imaginable. Once it matters, rejection becomes expensive. So they begin managing the emotional risk. They reveal themselves in careful portions. They test how safe it is to be real without ever calling it a test. And if the response feels even slightly off, they retreat fast. Sometimes they ask indirect questions instead of direct ones. Not because they are manipulative, but because direct need can feel humiliating. They want reassurance without having to expose the hunger for reassurance. They want closeness without feeling dependent on it. You can be loved and still feel unconvinced. You can sit next to someone caring and secretly wonder when the warmth will change temperature. That private doubt drains so much energy. They may even say, "I know you did nothing wrong," but inside, their system is still reacting as if something important could slip. This is why trust issues are not solved by shame. Shame only makes the fear hide better. When someone feels embarrassed by how much reassurance they need, they do not become calmer. They just become quieter about their needs. Then the relationship gets more confusing. The partner sees distance, but not the fear underneath it. A sincere person with trust issues can look detached at the exact moment they care the most. That is one of the saddest parts. They may become brief after a vulnerable moment. They may act normal when they actually feel deeply shaken. They may stop reaching out first, just to see whether the bond still comes toward them. Not because they want games, but because they want proof. Sometimes they read love through effort. If I matter, you will notice the shift. If I matter, you will check in. If I matter, I will not always have to ask. But the other person may have no idea a test is happening. So both people start missing each other in real time. This is how trust issues create mixed signals without bad intentions. One person is protecting pain, while the other is reacting to the protection. The fear says, do not need too much. The fear says, do not believe too fast. The fear says, if you relax completely, you will be caught off guard. So they stay partially guarded, even in good moments. They keep one hand on the emotional exit, not because they want to leave, but because leaving feels easier than being left. That is why some sincere people become unusually sensitive to changes in tone. They are not only hearing words, they are tracking safety. A slower greeting can feel meaningful. A distracted voice can trigger old uncertainty. The partner may simply be tired, but the nervous system hears possible distance and starts preparing. Now the person is no longer just in the conversation. They are in the memory of other conversations that ended badly. That is what trust issues often are. Present moments crowded by old emotional expectations. Love that was available, then unavailable. Care that felt warm, then confusing. Promises that sounded sincere, then dissolved. Affection that had to be earned through perfect behavior. Those experiences teach a quiet lesson. Do not settle too fully into love, because love can move. And once that lesson lives in the body, sincerity does not erase it. In fact, sincerity can intensify it. Because sincere people do not love halfway. They know what it costs them when they care. They remember how long it takes to recover from being misread, dismissed, or emotionally dropped. So they protect the heart before the fall. But sometimes it is not peace. Sometimes it is hyper-control dressed as self-respect. Sometimes saying, I am fine, really means, I do not trust this enough to show you what moved in me. Sometimes distance is not clarity, but fear with good posture. There is usually a history behind the hesitation, a reason the person learned to love with one foot hovering. Maybe they were the one who cared more. Maybe they were taught that needs create burden. Maybe closeness once came with criticism, withdrawal, or emotional unpredictability. So now steadiness feels desired, but strangely hard to believe. This does not mean they are broken. It means their heart became intelligent in a protective way. The problem is that protective intelligence can start blocking the very thing it wants. It can confuse safety with distance and danger with emotional openness. That is why some people only feel calm when they do not care yet. The minute love becomes real, management begins. They monitor whether they look too invested, all because being fully visible feels riskier than being misunderstood. And that creates a cruel cycle. The more they protect themselves, the less accurately they get known. The less accurately they get known, the less safe love feels. Then they protect even more. So yes, trust issues can hurt relationships. Not only because they create doubt, but because they interrupt emotional clarity. A partner cannot respond to fear they cannot see. They can only respond to the version of it that comes out. And what comes out is not always beautiful. It can be sarcasm, delay, coolness, overanalysis, or sudden emotional distance. It can be saying, do whatever you want, when the real sentence is, please show me I matter here. It can be acting unimpressed by consistency because hope feels too dangerous. But none of this means the love is fake. In many cases, the love is exactly why the fear is so strong. People who love sincerely are often the most shaken by uncertainty. They do not want casual reassurance because they do not feel casual about attachment. They care with the full awareness that relationships can nourish or undo entire parts of a person. That makes them careful, sometimes painfully careful. So the goal is not to romanticize trust issues. They can distort good love and exhaust both people. But the goal is also not to mock them as weakness. They are often the leftover shape of someone trying very hard not to be emotionally shattered again. And healing, if that word is used honestly, is usually less dramatic than people think. It is not becoming fearless overnight. It is learning that discomfort does not always mean danger. It is letting kind patterns count, even when your body is slow to believe them. It is noticing when you are reacting to a tone from the past instead of the person in front of you. It is naming your fear before your fear turns into distance. It is saying, "This matters to me," instead of punishing the other person for not guessing. It is asking for reassurance before resentment builds around the silence. It is understanding that needing steadiness does not make you needy. It makes you human. And it is understanding that self-protection becomes costly when it blocks tenderness from reaching you. A closed door keeps danger out, but it also keeps warmth outside. Real trust is not blind. It is not naive. It is not the absence of caution. Real trust is gradually allowing reality to update old expectations. It is letting consistency become more believable than fear. That takes time, especially for people whose hearts are sincere enough to take love seriously. But sincerity is not the problem. The problem is when sincerity only knows how to survive, not how to receive. Because some people do not need to learn how to love more. They need to learn how to stay present while being loved. That is the deeper psychology behind trust issues in sincere people. They are not afraid of love because they feel too little. They are afraid of what love can touch. They are afraid of what it can reopen, reveal, and eventually take. So if this pattern lives in you, be honest about it without turning it into your identity. You are not just guarded. You are someone whose heart learned to wear armor around what matters. And armor can be understood without becoming permanent. Because the truth is, your distrust may not be proof that love is unsafe. Sometimes it is proof that love is finally important enough to scare you. And that may be the most painful part. It may also be the beginning of something more honest. Not perfect trust, not instant peace, just the quiet courage to stop treating every tender thing like a threat. To let reassurance reach you a little deeper. To let consistency mean something before fear explains it away. To stay 5 seconds longer instead of disappearing emotionally. To speak one honest sentence sooner instead of testing devotion from a distance. That is how trust begins changing, not through force, but through repeated experiences of being safe enough to remain. And maybe that is what sincere love actually asks of you. Not less feeling, but less hiding inside your feeling. Because people with trust issues are not always hard to love. Sometimes they are simply hard to reach while they are protecting the softest parts of themselves. And once you understand that, everything looks different. The distance is not always emptiness. Sometimes it is devotion with fear in its throat. Sometimes it is deep love still learning how not to brace for loss.